to get those. Amanda just started hers, so she'll have those letters in a few years too. Yes, but if you want to be a professor, lots of teachers have multiple degrees, and if you want to be a professor and work at a university like I do, most people end up with a doctorate, so they have those letters behind their name. So I want to make sure you kind of understood what that meant, and so that means most of my students call me Dr. Beth. So, because I have kind of a last name that's hard to say and it's hyphenated and it's hard to spell, so feel free to call me Dr. Beth. At any point during the presentation, if you have a question, because there's just a small number of us, feel free to ask the question, or if you can drop the question in the chat. I'll be kind of sharing my screen and then closing it so I can see what the chat is. But if there's any, Amanda, if you see anything in the chat that maybe I need to address right away, feel free to call attention to it if I don't see it. But I want you to make sure, I want you to ask questions, and I designed it so that you can be a little bit interactive with me and tell me, answer some questions for me. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here. But welcome, I'm really excited that we have so many people on the call who want to be teachers, because we really need teachers right now. Have a question? Okay. In Missouri right now, we have a real need for teachers. So there is quite a shortage, especially in some of the areas that are more rural, that are outside of the cities. It's really tough to find, especially math and science teachers at the high school level. So if you're the kind of person who likes math and science and you want to be, you would want to share that love with some other students, we have a real need for you right now. And what I like to ask kids like you when I work with them is not what do you want to be when you grow up? Have you gotten asked that a lot maybe? Rather than asking you that, I like to ask, how do you want to change the world? Not what do you want to be, but what do you want to do when you grow up? And I think that teachers change the world every day. We're one of the few jobs, I think, where we get to change the world every day. I want you to take a minute and think about your favorite teacher. And I want you to think about 2 words that might describe that teacher. And if you could just drop those in the chat. Just 2 words that describe your favorite teacher. And if you're not sure, you could think about, maybe you don't have a favorite teacher or you're homeschooled. You could think about what qualities would you like to see in a teacher, or what qualities in the person who homeschools you, in your family, what things do they do that help you be a good student? I'm seeing some great responses: engaging, knowledgeable, caring, interactive, encouraging, approachable. These are great words, great words. Caring and interactive. Yep. Good responses. So you may want to think about how people would typically describe you. If they would describe you in some of those ways as caring. And you may have had someone who suggested that you be a teacher, or maybe even when you were younger, you liked to play teacher. I know my sister and I, we used to play teacher all the time with our stuffed animals. We would line them up on the bed and pretend we were teaching them things. So here's some of the words that my class came up with. So I teach college students who want to be teachers. And some of the words that, and that's These are the people who work with me here. This is us at a community event. We did a thank a teacher night. So this is a student writing a thank you note to her teacher. And these were some of the words that they described when they were thanking a teacher. Patient, creative, problem solvers, caring. Some of you said caring. Confident. It can be challenging to get up in front of 30 students every day. Organized, fun, a people person, that they love their content. So if they're teaching music or math or biology or whatever it is, that teacher really loves it. That they're invested in their community. They make connections with what's being taught in the classroom, with what's going on out in the community. They're very positive, encouraging, and they have high expectations. So this seems a lot like what some of you put in the chat. So I mentioned earlier what teachers do, and teachers, gosh, they do a lot, to be perfectly honest. They usually come in way before school starts, and they've done a lot of preparation before they ever stand in front of the class and start to deliver instruction. So there's a lot of planning that goes into being a teacher. You have to attend lots of meetings, usually before school even starts. Those teachers have been to hours and hours of meetings, and they've worked in their classrooms and they've worked on their lessons. So there's a lot of planning. But some of the fun things about being a teacher, I think, are that you're always learning new technology. You get to try out new things, and you're learning new strategies. So if you like to learn new stuff, I think teaching is definitely something that you should consider. You get to know your students. So you, as a teacher, will have thousands of students in your classroom over the course of your career. And you'll get to know every single one of them, and you'll get to know their story, and you'll be with them for the whole school year. And so if you're one of those people who really, you like to connect with people and talk with them and learn about them and ask them questions, this might be something for you to think about. And you get to help students. This is a helping profession. So teaching is a helping profession. So you get to help them learn content, so the subjects, but you also get to help them learn life skills. Sometimes things like managing emotions, things like that. Oh, question.
Beth, Mark does have a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
I actually came here for the lore class. So I'm kind of confused right now.
Well, the person who is the lawyer, I don't think can come today. So I'm talking about being a teacher.
Okay.
So maybe that's something to think about.
Right. Okay. Well, if
you don't want to stay, I understand too, if you were expecting a lawyer.
Yeah. I was actually want to be taught that. Should I just come back next time?
Yeah, Mark, we're going to reschedule the lawyer. So she is going to be on one day, and it probably won't be for a month or so, but we will reschedule her, okay?
Okay. How do I know when?
We will send a flyer out and we'll put it on our Facebook page, okay?
Okay.
Okay, but thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay, so you also get to do lots of creative things when you're a teacher. You get to do projects with your class. It depends on what you teach, what those are. But I think being a teacher is one way to have a creative outlet. And then something that teachers do a lot, but we don't talk about it as much, is that they look at data to get better. So they look at the numbers and the scores of how students do on some of the projects and tests and things like that. They look at that to help them get better so that they can improve when they're teaching either next year or the same students in front of them, because teachers always learning new things and they're always trying to get better. Teaching is definitely never boring, no matter what level you're teaching. It is never boring. It's a fairly stable career. You have a contract for an entire year, and then once you get tenure, you can stay there until you retire, as long as you're doing your job. Here in Missouri, we're lucky that we have very good teacher retirement. So people are able to retire at a fairly young age when you compare with other states. So although we have a little lower salary here in Missouri, we have a really good retirement system. So it kind of balances out a little, although you're probably not thinking about retirement at this point in your life, but that is one of the benefits of being a teacher. When you do go to college, you may have to take out some student loans to help pay for that. And as a teacher, you're eligible for some student loan forgiveness programs. So even if you have to take out student loans, if you work in a school that is high need, you can often get some of that paid back. So that's something to think about. And there are some scholarships specifically for teachers, because there is such a need for teachers right now. And I would just say that being a teacher is definitely stressful, but it is a different kind of stress than being a lawyer or being an engineer, where you're managing an assembly line or something like that. So it certainly has stress, but I would say it's a different kind of stress than some jobs have. You're not going to get a call at 1:30 in the morning and that the assembly line is down and you have to go fix it. That typically doesn't happen in teaching. So it has its own type of stress. So to be a teacher, the state of Missouri has some laws regulating what you have to do to be a teacher. And most states are like this. Missouri is not unique. And this is my class here. These are my students. They're doing a STEM project. That was last semester. They were practicing what they were going to teach to students in schools. So we have a lot of fun in our classes. So in Missouri, to be a teacher, you need a 4-year degree. And you can do that by either starting at a university or college and going there all 4 years, or you could start at a community college and then transfer to a 4-year school. And there are lots of 2-year teaching programs that will help you go into the 4-year program. So teaching is a field that is easily transferable from community college to 4-year college, if that's something that you decide to look into. You do have to pass at least one test. And if you want to be, say, a math teacher, that's going to be a math test to make sure that you know enough math to be teaching kids math. And you have to keep certain grade point average requirements. Does anybody want to guess? Maybe you can drop in the chat, like what grades do you think are expected out of a teacher? Like all A's, B's, C's, maybe it's pretty low. Maybe you just have to pass everything. Anyone guess? All A's, yeah. All A's. Yeah, college can be a little tougher than middle school or high school sometimes, yeah. Most of our students do really well, but I will say I do not give out all A's every semester in my classes. So you have to keep a 3.0, so that means a B or higher in your education courses and in whatever classes are related to what you're going to be teaching. So if you were going to be a music teacher, you need a B or better in your music classes, like a 3.0 GPA. If you get 1 or 2 C's, it's okay. It'll balance out as long as you get A's. So you have to have a pretty good GPA. It's a much higher GPA than other professions, actually. And then you need, for what we call the cumulative GPA, which means every single course that you've ever taken, you need a 2.75. So there are some requirements that are mandated by law in terms of the GPA. And those have only gone up over time. When I went through, it was not that high, but it keeps getting higher and higher. And you're also going to have, when you're in your four-year program to be a teacher, your last semester is going to be student teaching. And what that means is you're going to be interning or shadowing a teacher and doing everything that they do. So your very last semester before you graduate, that's when you'll be working with a teacher and you're actually going to be teaching every single day and grading papers and planning and doing all of that stuff. So it's about what you expected. Anything that has surprised you so far about being a teacher? Pretty standard stuff. Here's some of the options of what we call certifications here in Missouri. So again, the state regulates who can teach and what requirements you have to have, and you take different classes depending on what you want to teach. So here are just a few of the options that we have here in Missouri, and it is different from state to state. Some states handle things like social studies a little bit differently. So this is what it is here in Missouri. But if you graduate and you end up not wanting to teach in Missouri and you want to move, it's often pretty easy to get your Missouri certificate transferred to a different state. As I mentioned, most states really need teachers and they are glad to have you from wherever you're from. So these are a few of the options. So early childhood, that actually can be anywhere from birth, so little bitty babies, all the way up to 3rd grade is what we consider early childhood here in Missouri. Anybody interested in early childhood? As I go through, if it's the one that you're interested in, just put something in the chat, and that way I'll make sure that I talk about that one a little bit more. So I don't want to bore you with ones that maybe aren't what you're interested in. Elementary school, in the state of Missouri, that's grades 1 through 6. So actually, if you're elementary certified, you cannot teach kindergarten. That is technically early childhood. So this is grades 1 through 6. And you will, as an elementary teacher, you teach lots of different things. You teach math and science and social studies, but a lot of reading. That's all about, or elementary has a lot of reading. Okay, so I see we've got at least one person who wants to be an elementary teacher. So when you go through a teacher preparation program to be an elementary teacher, you're going to have a lot of what we call methods classes. And those are, as it sounds like, where you learn how to teach all of those different things. And at Missouri S&T, because we have a science, technology, engineering, and math emphasis, we have a special class about STEM, teaching STEM methods. And that's a really fun class, and it's actually connected with Project Lead the Way, which is a program that some schools have. So that's something special that we have at Missouri S&T because we are a STEM-focused university. We have a special STEM methods class for elementary. Usually elementary is very focused on reading. Some programs like ours, we try to balance that and make sure we're including math and some computer science and those types of things so that it's you become well-rounded as an elementary teacher. But it is really important to teach kids to read when they're especially 1st and 2nd grade. There's special education. So that is students who need a variety of different services, and special education is the certification is really broad. You can teach kindergarten through 12th grade. Usually people end up kind of specializing one way or the other, but the certification is pretty broad. And you'll take lots of different classes about how to help different kinds of students be successful in school. And there's some compliance issues. There's specific laws regarding special education that have to be followed. And so you'll learn about that. And then there's also some specialty areas of teaching. So foreign language, Spanish, French, German, those types of things. That's actually a K-12 certification in Missouri. There are some elementary schools that teach Spanish, for instance. There's physical education, so PE, and that's K through 12. And I didn't put art on here, but art is one as well, and music too. So if you become certified as a music teacher, you can teach elementary or high school. So when you go through the program, we try to have you have different experiences. And computer science is a new certification in Missouri. So if you like coding and you're learning that type of thing, that can be added on to another teaching certificate. So so subject area specific. So this means that you don't get certified just to teach middle school. You have to be middle school English or math or science or social studies. So I saw somebody was looking at maybe subject area specific. So if you know what subject you might want to teach, if you could put that in the chat. And that way I can tell you a little bit about which one. I used to be an English teacher. So I was a high school English teacher and I taught freshmen. That was my favorite. But there's lots of different areas in particular at high school. There's physics, biology, chemistry, science. Yeah, that's good, good, good. And so it depends if you want to teach at the middle school or at the high school level. You won't take quite as many of the content courses if you want to teach middle school because you're teaching younger kids, but you will have to have some education classes specifically about adolescence, which is most of you, and how they develop. So you'll have some specific education courses about that. Now, if you're going to teach high school, there's different models for how you get through your degree program. One of those models is that you actually get a degree in your content area. So I saw someone wants to do biology. So you would major in biology, and then you would either minor or get a dual major with education. So you'll take a lot of the biology classes, some pretty high level stuff, and you'll be in the lab, and you'll be dissecting things, and you'll go out into the field and be catching bugs and studying them and all kinds of interesting things like that. So the higher up you want to teach, so if you want to teach physics or biology or chemistry or math at the high school level, you'll have to take more of that content, and often that's a full degree or close to it. There are some programs in Missouri where you get a 4-year degree, say in biology, and then you get a master's in education. That's another model that they have at some schools. So there's lots of, particularly at the subject specific, the programs start to look different. So as you start thinking about going to college, just be aware that there's different models. Some will have a degree that says biology. Some, the degree may say biology education, and some may be a dual major. There's lots of different ways it works. Okay. And I also wanted to make sure that you knew that there's other jobs besides being a teacher in schools. School districts are fairly large entities, actually, that employ quite a few people. There's the counselor, the guidance counselor who helps with course scheduling, might help you with figuring out where you want to go to college if you're in high school, but also helps students with their emotional well-being. There's people who work with the technology in the schools. There's technology coaches. There's people behind the scenes, like the IT people who are setting up the computers and fixing computers when they break and working on the network and all of those types of things. So they're not educators exactly, but they certainly have jobs in schools. There's coaches for both athletic teams and things like the robotics teams and things like that. There are teachers who specialize in teaching English to students whose first language is not English. And sometimes they have immigrated here. And so there's, school is different here than they may have been used to. There's teachers for gifted students. There's people who are reading specialists who specifically help students learn how to read. There's also social workers who come in and talk to students if they need to about what's going on at home and see if they can offer some assistance. Speech pathologists, they're particularly in kindergarten and younger, typically younger ages, but not always, where they're helping students who may need that. And then of course there's the principals who run the school. So there's lots of people who work in schools and they're not always teachers. There's also paraprofessionals, or they used to be called teacher's aides. So they might be in the class kind of helping out the teacher. So there's lots of different jobs that are possible for schools. And I just wanted to tell you just a little bit about me and the difference between being a teacher and being a professor, which I talked about a little bit. So I'm a professor of education, and I'm a doctor, but I'm not a medical doctor. I like to call myself a teaching doctor because I have a PhD, not an MD like a medical doctor. And so I'm a department chair, and so I have a little bit, I teach one class a semester, so I still get to teach, which makes me very happy because I love teaching. But then I also have some administrative stuff that I do too. And I would say that if you like teaching, something you may want to also consider that there is professors are teachers in college. And it's different, but it is the same idea. If you really love your content and you want to do research, that's one of the biggest differences between high school teachers and college teachers. College teachers don't teach as much. Usually your classes are bigger, but you also have to do research and go to a lot of meetings. We have a lot of meetings in higher education. That's a little bit about me. And I work at Missouri S&T, and you'll see behind me, this is my virtual background. That's my building, that's our campus, the way it looked back in the spring when all the flowers were coming up. Those are the tulips. And I can tell you a little bit about our program specifically. We prepare lots of math and science high school teachers right now. Math is our biggest area, which is pretty unusual. And we have small classes. So when I teach, I typically have 15 to 20 students in my class, which is pretty small for college. It only takes 4 years to do our degrees. Some models, you'll have the 5th year master's, but ours are just 4 years, and we only have undergrad right now. There are some places where you can go all the way up and get your doctorate in education. We just have undergrad right now. So that's a little bit about me and about our program. I'm going to stop screen sharing now. And I just want to open it up if you have any specific questions about being a teacher or anything that I mentioned. I will try to answer for you.
If you have questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask Dr. Beth whatever question you'd like to ask her.
Have you taught any kinds of coding classes lately? Or not lately, but in general, any types of coding or robotics related classes?
So we embed some of that content in our teacher education classes. So actually last fall, my class went into an elementary school, kind of a smaller rural elementary school, and they taught us, they designed themselves STEM lessons to teach to elementary kids. And it was really challenging because they had to design something that would work for kindergarten all the way up through 5th grade. And there's a big difference between a 5-year-old kindergartner and an 11, 10-year-old 5th grader, right? So they designed, one of the activities they designed was with code pillars. I don't know if you've used those, but it was pretty basic coding, but we were in the cafeteria, so we didn't have as much technology and there wasn't great internet access there. So we had to be really creative. So that's just one example. But we have in the STEM methods class, they code VEX robots. So we try to embed that content throughout. So we have like little pieces of coding throughout our curriculum, but it's something that we probably need more of, to be honest. That's a great question. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have some of my students who are coaches, robotics team coaches, which it's not required, but they use that as some of their, you have to have so many hours of working with students in teacher education, and so they use that as some of their hours.
Do you know which robotics teams they are, or what group, I guess, too?
They're the Lego League one.
Okay.
First, yeah. Because we have a big, well, we used to have a competition on our campus in the gym, but I don't know if that will happen next year or not. But last year we had the competition on campus.
Thanks. I only ask because we do robotics as well.
Oh.
We do VEX EDR. It's well, I guess it's VRC now, but it was the big metal ones. It wasn't quite the college level, but it was high school and middle school that we did. I just thought it was really neat.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great experience for you.
What would you say was the biggest challenge through your journey, like getting your degrees, getting your doctorate, teaching wise and stuff like that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think finishing a dissertation is really challenging. That's the last thing you have to do before you get your doctorate. And essentially it's writing a book about a research project that you did. And that's really tough because you're typically not in a class. You sort of have to go do that on your own. Like, here, go write this 150-page book. And you have to be really motivated yourself and set your own deadlines and hold yourself accountable. And you don't have the structure of going to class every Tuesday at 2:30 or whatever it is. So that dissertation part is pretty tough, and you write and then you send it to your professors for feedback, and sometimes they tell you stuff that's really hard to hear, and you have to do a lot of work to meet their expectations. So that's really challenging when you're finishing a doctorate.
How long do you have to write the dissertation? Or is it different for each program or what you're writing on?
Yeah, different programs have different time limits. I would say the longer you take, though, the harder it's going to be to finish. Because if you just put it away and you don't work on it, every time you come back to it, you have to kind of read back over what you did and you don't remember, and you sort of get out of the rhythm of writing. So the best thing to do is to finish it as soon as you can. It took me a year, I'd say, when I was done with classes, to write my dissertation.
And to follow up with that, so that was your biggest challenge. What's the best advice you would give for going through that journey? Like, what advice do you wish you had at the beginning that you had, like what knowledge that you have now, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I wish I would have asked for help more when I was a new teacher. I think I thought that I had to do everything myself, or that people might think I didn't know what I was doing if I asked for help. And I should have just asked. And I tell my student teachers now, I try to really encourage them that if they need something, just to ask. And we may not be able to get them what they need, but we might be able to coach them through how they can find the resources they need. So I wish I would have asked for help more. I think I would have been less frustrated, and I think there were times I was really stressed, where maybe I could have asked for help and not been as stressed. Those are great questions.
Right on. Thank you.
How long did you teach before you switched over to working at the college level?
Not as long. I only taught 3 years. Yeah, before I switched. So.
What did you teach? Or did I miss it? Sorry, like for
Oh,
those
no, it's
3
okay.
years.
I taught English, high school English. I
Okay.
taught freshmen.
Cool.
And I liked it. Mostly I left because what I wanted to do was do more I wanted to do writing and research and publish, and you usually don't do that as a high school teacher. So when I finished my master's degree, I really missed going to school, and so I went back for my doctorate.
Nice.
So I'm not specifically interested in teaching in a classroom setting, but I am interested in writing educational books and possibly doing some sort of non-conventional sort of education, maybe one-on-one tutoring sort of relating to biology. But do you have any advice just for general incorporating education into a career like that? Because I want to be mainly focused on research in the field of biology, but I do want to kind of help bring some of those issues into the mainstream using books.
Great. Yes, I think that when you're in college, even if you don't want to be a teacher, I think even a few education classes will help you in almost any field. And if you want to do, I heard you mention educational books. So what I would say on that is, as much as you can make things relevant to the people reading it, and it depends on who your audience is. But one of the things I try to encourage in my class is, because I have students who are taking these very high level biology and math and physics classes about, quite honestly, stuff that I do not understand. I have never taken a physics class in my life. So I have students in my class who want to be physics teachers. And so I really encourage them to make me care. That's what I tell them. You really love physics, but I don't love physics. I don't know anything about physics. You have to explain it to me. So that's one of the biggest challenges when you love your content like that, is making it relevant to someone who doesn't love it and maybe doesn't care. You have to make them care. That's what's really challenging as a teacher. But that's really interesting that there's lots of people who have jobs doing like tutoring, or they run tutoring or after school care or things like that, they're related to education, but it's not a formal teacher, as you mentioned, where you don't need to like student teach and do that whole thing, but taking education classes might be really helpful. People who run nonprofit organizations that work with schools or with an education focus sometimes have an education degree to kind of help them. And in businesses, sometimes there are people who their job is to train other adults or to design content to train people in modules. So they're called instructional designers. There's lots of jobs kind of connected to education, but that aren't exactly teachers. So that's a great point too. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you guys have asked some really great questions. And so, does anybody else have any questions that they would like to ask? Some very thought-provoking questions we've had. Okay, well, Dr. Beth, we certainly appreciate you being with us today and sharing all of your wealth of knowledge with us. And again, I apologize that our lawyer friend, Shalana Scales-Ferguson, was not able to join us, but we will reschedule her. So just keep checking our Facebook page, and we will put the reschedule date on there so you'll know when she's able to join us. But again, thank you everybody for joining us. We'll end a little early, and we hope that you have a good rest of the day. And whatever your school year looks like coming up, I hope it's good. I hope that it's an enjoyable one and that you get out of it what you need to get. So thank you again. Thank you again, Dr. Beth, and I hope that Missouri S&T has a great start off as well. Okay, you guys have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
good day, guys.
you.
Thank you very
Have a good
much.
day.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, you knew somebody on there? One of them, from what we heard was.
Did you get see their names? What were the two that asked the questions? It was a boy and a girl.
Ada, ADI.
Annie.